Good afternoon, welcome to MK Gallery. I'm Anthony Spira, for those of you who don't know me, director here. And I'm really pleased that Tom Emerson from 6A is also here, so we can share with you the latest information on our exciting expansion plans. Some of you have attended a number of these events before, but some I'm not entirely familiar with, so we're going to assume you know nothing, and I think give you a complete overview. Obviously you can ask questions at the end. And what did I would say as an introduction? Really, I spent the last couple of days, funny enough, at big networking events. One is we've just joined a network called Plus Tate, organised by the Tate, but I was with 40 of the leading visual arts organisations across the UK, talking about all our exciting plans and all the challenges that we're facing. And then yesterday afternoon, there was a convention with the Arts Council for all arts organisations across the South East. And what's really exciting is that there is a genuine sense, it seems, that things are happening in Milton Keynes, and people in the outside world are beginning to detect that, and that's really exciting. And it's really, I'm really proud to know that the gallery is kind of leading the way on some of those things, particularly with the expansion. And I've been here for about 6 years, I think, and this whole expansion has really come out of a number of discussions and generally listening to our audiences and to what people say about the organisation, what they like about it, what they don't like so much about it. So we did some pretty extensive feasibility studies to try and see what was actually possible for us to do. We of course have one of the most successful theatres in the UK on our doorstep, and it's about time that the gallery stepped up to the mark. So I'm really pleased that the feasibility studies indicated that we could do something quite substantial. And the other thing is we've got a major landmark obviously coming up in a couple of years. Milton Keynes will be 50, and I'm thrilled that the gallery's expansion will be at the heart of those celebrations. So what did the feasibility suggest that we might be able to do? Well, one of the things that we looked at doing was doubling the size of the exhibition spaces. And not just doubling the size, but also looking at the programme and thinking about how to diversify it. The gallery's always been uncompromisingly cutting edge and contemporary, but we have listened to some audiences and non-audiences, and we have heard that people would also like historical exhibitions as well as the contemporary. So the idea post-opening is to do exhibitions of historical art, museum-style exhibitions, as well as some of the more challenging, showing younger artists as well. Another thing that we realised is we need to improve our community and learning facilities. So the new building will have state-of-the-art learning studio spaces, and this is really to help us to extend all the work we do with community groups and schools and families. We've also been able to add a multi-purpose auditorium into this scheme, and we're looking at around 150 seats. They would be retractable, so you can have 300 people standing, and the idea is to have all sorts of different art forms. And I think the thing about the theatre is there are 1,400 seats in the theatre, so it takes a very particular type of programme to fill it up. Well, we're looking to do things that are more experimental, more improvised, more spontaneous, and hopefully working with lots of groups in Milton Keynes, as well as national and touring bands, for example. So we do music, film screening, spoken word, conferences, and hopefully hire the space out for corporate events, maybe even for weddings, those kind of things. And then we will increase and improve the shop. We have a very modest shop at the moment, we'd like to develop that. And perhaps most importantly, you will finally have a cafe bar. And this is the most common complaint that I currently get, is that there's nowhere for people to socialise and have a drink. So we're planning to reopen the building in summer 2017, I hope. And in terms of funding, I'm really pleased to say that we have now secured £10 million, and it's a kind of perfect blend of public and private funding. And I'm particularly thrilled to announce that one of the most prestigious trusts in the world has agreed to give us a substantial amount of funding in order to make this multi-purpose auditorium possible. It will be known as the Sackler Sky Room and Auditorium in the future. And I'll just say very quickly something about the Sacklers, for those of you who haven't heard of them. When I first met their trustees, I asked if they funded anything outside of London. And the trustees undenied, scratched their chins, they thought about it for a while, and suddenly one of them put his hand up and said, yes, we funded the Louvre in Paris, the Metropolitan in New York. And I thought, should I just leave the room now? I didn't, and eventually it came good, which is amazing. The thing they discussed the most at the board meeting when they made the decision whether to fund this or not was why Milton Keynes. And hopefully the gallery is really making the case for the city. As I said, really thrilled that Tom Emerson, founder of 6A Architects, is here, and it's a real privilege for, I think, for Milton Keynes and for the gallery to be working with architects of this calibre. And I won't say much more about what you do, because I think you'll probably give a bit of an overview before going into the gallery's plans. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, as Anthony mentioned, I've got he's asked me to sort of slightly do a short introduction to our work and then to show you the project as it stands. It's very much kind of work in progress. I know that there are many people here who've seen some of these presentations before, so there was some repetition. Unfortunately, the career of an architect is quite slow, so the portfolio I have now is quite similar to the one I had 6 months ago. But with a few developments, and then the end of the presentation is really where we are now. So it's not fully coordinated, but I think it's a sense we are quite close, I think, to being, to having the final design that we would like to build next year. So it's quite right. Anyway, most of our work is in the arts. Most of our work is galleries, some education, and then some housing. And the arts has a very large and kind of diverse community. And this is one of the first galleries we did. It's different, it's slightly bleached out, but it's a contemporary arts centre in Spitalfields called Raven Row. And there it was really about a kind of conversation between the history of Spitalfields, and of which this won the archive photos, and then the new galleries which were built at the back of these silk nurses' houses. Technically very challenging, and then a kind of continued programme of multimedia work, so film work, installation and film work. So quite you could say the environmental extremes of daylight, floor-based, and darkness, and projection. And then we did everything from the kind of handrails to the door handles, and tried to respond to some of the sort of checkered history, the complex history of the place. Things like picking up on the kind of the burning down of the buildings in the 70s and then rebuilding them with these sort of traditional Japanese techniques. So a lot of our work is based around materials. The cast iron facade at the back, which is also a casting of burnt timber. And then that became the basis for another project in London for Paul Smith, which is a facade in Mayfair, which is also cast iron. This time rather more decorative, picking up on some of the Regency detailing of Albemarle Street, the kind of interlocking circles. And then another project in London, the South London Gallery. This is a view of the Claw Education Studio, which was one of the core elements of their expansion. So they had a great gallery, which is to the right, late 19th century, but nothing else. So it was about education studio, which this is one. It's like a kind of fort. It's in a very tough bit of South London, but then the whole thing kind of opens up, and then education program flows outside. And we've just started now a new garden with an artist, Gabriella Roscoe. So 5 years after it opened, the final bit of the puzzle coming through. A project that's very much about back gardens. It's all in the kind of hinterland of Peckham. So gardens, interiors. This is the interior of the original gallery, and then some of the new spaces around, fitted around in gardens and backyards. One of the things that we've learned about doing galleries is you have to put a lot of attention to the quality of the gallery space, the lighting, the environment, the movement, and then every other space is also under suspicion. Artists will use staircases, will use lost rooms, will use gardens, and this is sort of part of this kind of backyard landscape, and what's called the garden room, which is this one, where a wall that's 7 meters tall, 8 meters long, designed so no light switches, no plug sockets. It's the ultimate art wall, and then the artist comes along and uses the other one with the fire escape sign on it. But that's sort of the life of the gallery. One of the things that's very exciting is that the gallery is the foundation, but the entire institution is really where the culture and the social life happens. This is another garden project. Occasionally we do some houses, not that often. This is a house in a back garden in East London for a very heavily disabled client, Lizzie, and the whole house was about getting from the street to the garden across a drop of 1.5 meters and trying to make some architecture out of it. Timber frame, very cheap building. She said, you can do whatever you like as long as you don't touch my Judas tree, mulberry tree, sorry. And so we had to bend the house around this tree, which then actually makes the character of the house. It makes it longer, so there's more ramp. And so it was a small project, but sort of very kind of thematically important to be able to deal with all needs. That architecture is kind of, it may have an image, but it's about many other things too. It was made with reclaimed timber, reclaimed railway sleepers in Jarrah. So that's a rainy day in Essex, trying to find the right boards. And we're doing a much bigger project at the moment in Cambridge for the university, for Churchill College, which is made entirely out of reclaimed oak from railway carriages, 19th century railway carriages. The great thing is that it's pre-aged. Oak is great material, but it ages in a quite patchy way. Here it's really dark, really dry. And of course, this is Churchill College, which is one of the best brutalist buildings in the country. It's listed now. And this kind of rough timber actually matches the concrete of the college very well. So this is on site at the moment. It's being built in a green field. It's a courtyard building, halls of residence. So this is one of the original courtyards, which are generally very empty. Ours is full with a woodland, and well, a little bit too pale, but it's basically a square, but with very slight distortion, kind of curve on it, timber framed, and it's on the right-hand side of this image, so it's the kind of 10th court, which is then kind of clad entirely in this reclaimed oak, and that will be finished by summer this time next year. And then more with kind of concrete, this is a project that's nearly finished. Again, in the arts, it's neither a gallery nor a house, it's an artist studio for a photographer in West London. Photographer called Jürgen Teller. It's a very long, thin site, very short street elevation. So very long and thin. The right-hand side is the street, 70 meters long and 7 meters wide, and it's effectively a series of building garden, building garden, building garden, that will go from the very public to the very private, like a retreat. This is some of Jürgen's work, mainly a portrait photographer. This is him, this is our client. We have very few clients with a good selfie like that. But very difficult build, trying to build in between these kind of party walls, which is why it's concrete, because that will flow more or less into every space. The quality of the building is incredibly good at the moment, so we're pleased, about 3/4 done. So it's a project that goes staff and archive buildings on the street, then a garden, then the main studio, then a garden, and then a kind of a retreat. It's like a library, there's a sauna, there's a dining room. That's the front building. that's the main studio, and so that will be absolutely full of pictures with only light from above, north light from above, and then light from the sides from the courtyard buildings. And then the gardens that Jürgen asked for were like kind of ruined gardens. They're almost like the kind of garden that you get when nobody does anything for 50 years. And the image on the left is a rendering, the image on the right is about a month ago. So this very, very tall, double height studio space, top lit. And I suppose that that kind of interior brings us onto Milton Keynes, and I suppose where we're trying to go with the project. And started with this image, which is one of the very famous Jacobi drawings of the City Club, and this idea of a kind of city landscape, interiors, the grid, the garden city, all of these things sort of spinning within a very pure idea of the city. And I suppose as an architect, I also teach architecture. This image, which is sort of almost like the super icon of Milton Keynes, of this grid city laid across the Buckinghamshire landscape with a park on the end, the great boulevard down the centre, has been sort of one of the kind of the really, really exciting things about being asked to work here. Is that I think a lot of people in our field think it's probably one of the great set pieces of post-war planning anywhere. And if you look at the history of the grid city, right the way back from antiquity through into kind of neoclassicism, into kind of Savannah in America, the great American city, and for it somehow to come back with a kind of picturesque tradition, I think what Gareth described as the welfare state mixed with the yellow submarine. For us, that's the spirit is really important. So we start with these images, and this image of the site, which I'm sure you all know extremely well. It's a very powerful position. It's the last building before the park. It's the bit where the city, the grid of the city meets this kind of fantastic, almost kind of sculpture park. And it looks on one side onto the theatre, on this side, onto Midsummer Boulevard, and of course then onto the park beyond. Some images, some context images, and really the kind of the expansion has evolved over the last year, but this, broadly speaking, has remained strategically always the same. We have the two existing buildings there with the three existing galleries, and then we add another building on grid, a rectangle, as rectangular as we possibly can be, at the end, in order to start and expand the suite of galleries with another suite here, and in order then to make effectively a potential circuit starts from the entrance and ends back in the cafe. And then on the south side, there's a new education suite, and the technical infrastructure, and above the multi-purpose theatre auditorium that Anthony mentioned before. But I'll sort of do a walkthrough. So one of the things, which is a simple thing, but I think an important one, is we're retaining the entrance where it is, so it's shared and visible with the theatre, but taking away the sort of slightly strange screen there is. If you don't know, to have a look when you come out, it comes out here. And then maybe making it a much more Milton Keynesian entrance, which is the very famous porte cochere. This sort of great sort of symbol of the city, this kind of almost a residual roof on four legs. So that's the first part. And the second element is this window, cutting a window on the right into the first gallery, which then aligns with every opening all the way through the new galleries, and coming out at the other end. So at the moment, the entrance to the second gallery is here. So when you're here, you can sort of, you've got a rockwork wall, you seem to show there's a screen on it at the moment. So from here, as you walk to and from the theatre, you can actually only see the whole thing, and with a window out the back at the end. And on one level, it's a very, very traditional gallery plan. It's like the enfilade of galleries. And hopefully it will work very well with the program that Anthony mentioned, with being able to mix contemporary shows with more historic shows. But it's also, the big axis is totally Milton Keynesian. So we sort of felt that there was no conflict between almost a kind of quite a traditional gallery structure and then something which is sort of more part of the city, part of the grid, part of the axes. So these are the existing galleries. There's that blockwork wall I mentioned, and then the long gallery. I'm afraid this is getting a little bit bleached out, but this is the sort of the suite, and that's a view from the existing gallery looking all the way through all these spaces. So hopefully the geography of the building will be incredibly straightforward in the new building. You get to the end, turn left, and then look back towards Midsummer Boulevard with the axis window on your right. And then hopefully now this extended gallery landscape will be great for openings and be able to flow from, you could say, the private views into drinks and somehow make a really socialized ground floor. At the moment where let's see if I've got the plan. So on the front of the building, around this area, is currently back of house, workshop, things like that. And then that will be, you could say, the public front of the building. So everything public is really about the street, about being visible. And one of the things that's slightly different from previous versions of the plan, and we're really hoping this is going to work out, this is the line of the existing gallery, and we're hoping to build out another layer just to make this kind of foyer space, restaurant, cafe, shop, just a bit more generous, be able to kind of cater for a larger number of people and make the whole thing more visible. So being able to open it all up, this is all existing structure, so we're being very sort of economic, as it were. We're not removing anything we don't need to remove, especially structural work. And then hopefully be able to have this sort of this sense that you get now in really good art centres, where the programme, the bookshop, and actually the socialising forms one experience. Then of course there's the education room, the education studio, which is on the south side of the building, which is over here. And I think now this room forms an absolutely central part of the whole breadth of programme that the gallery is able to offer the local community, school groups, adults, and that's a sort of a very special and kind of protected space, with its own outdoor space at the back as well. The first floor, you could say, is more or less the technical floor. It's the kitchens for the cafe, it's workshop storage, and then plenty of blues, and then there's the living room, which is an existing space at the moment. And so a very technical floor, but one that needs to be really accessible, really functional, and also there's no reason why it shouldn't be really elegant too. The second floor, or you could say the first floor of the new building, this is the new building here, is essentially one very, very large room with retractable seating here, which can go out back for about 150 people in the seating mode and about 300 or possibly more in the retracted mode. And then with a opening screen here, so it can actually be the total first floor, or it can be separated out as a room for hire and performance space for different situations. And then really it's about a view out onto the street and the city from high level there, and then a huge one to the west over Campbell Park. And then some of the sort of technical backup loos and lifts and those kind of elements. So in section, this is the new gallery, 2 new galleries. This is it's on the boulevard, and this is that new space. So it's a big hall. Hopefully it'll be great for cinema, talks, concerts, performances, either separate or all together as one hall. And as Anthony described, a space that could be really have a very wide program and type of environment as well, depending on how it's divided and the furniture is arranged, from the quite traditional to almost a kind of Kunsthalle at the other extreme. And this is an image that we looked at right at the beginning of the project, before the feasibilities, which is one of the great art centres in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, where they have these spaces which go from poetry readings to rock concerts to chess championships to very experimental theatre, lecture programmes, and it's known as the living room of the city, which became one of the sort of inspirational elements. And then this view, which unfortunately you can only get if Simon very kindly escorts you onto the roof of the building, but it's absolutely spectacular. I mean, it's a really great moment where the sort of city somehow opens up to the park. I think that Campbell Park is, I think after, there have been very few parks, really good parks built in the 20th century in England. And I think this is one of them, sort of mid-century modernism with great geometry as well as kind of naturalised landscapes, a sort of latter-day picturesque. Hopefully that will be a really sort of central part of that top room. Materially, the building, I hope again, will be Milton Keynesian in its spirit. It's going to be steel frame, partly for its economy, but partly because of the sort of elegant rationalism that underpins the best buildings in Milton Keynes. Repetitive steel frame, and then which will be clad in stainless steel. So there will be a sort of a grid in. I'm afraid these are very bleached out. They're sort of there on my screen. They're not much more detailed, but there will be effectively that wall is in kind of polished stainless steel with the grid, I suppose, marked out. There will also be a vertical grid. And initially we were thinking of doing it in polished aluminium, a little bit like the Louvre in Lens, the new one that opened about a year and a half ago. But the price of kind of metalwork and commodities means that more recently, stainless steel is now cheaper than aluminium, which is fantastic. And this is a building in France with the use of polished stainless. It's something which is very responsive to the kind of colour of the sky, the surrounding trees and things like that. So this is a few months ago, and it's moved on since. We've also then been looking at some of the iconic structures of Milton Keynes. This is one of the great drawings, sort of, that's part of the story of the city, which is the space frame. The space frame being the architectural version of the city grid. And again, it's rather bleached out, but this is one of the versions of the sky room, where the top room is actually all glazed and would have a kind of steel space frame, so that the expression of the building is very much the spirit of the city. And that's where we are at now. So at the moment we're trying to kind of, in a sense, consolidate all these things and make sure they work with the budget, make sure they work with the program. But I think that at the last review, it's all on track, and we hope to kind of get the feedback and then take it to the next bit to build next year. Thank you.
really sorry that so few chance to be doing this on our projector. If you do want to see better images of them, we do have those available. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thanks. I mean, very, very nice scheme, given its history of fundraising. I think it's not lost anything that it has in its scheme. Maybe in fact sort of gained some things really. And just a couple of questions on multi-purpose. So obviously, I'm coming from the cinema side of things. How do you get into the multi-purpose space?
I think one of the absolute priorities for the building is for it to be flexible. And I think it works really well on that level. And when we get the right plan out.
So the main entrance is here. And so you come in reception, bookshop, and either, if you are coming to the gallery, you then enter the galleries here and do this circuit and come out. Or if you're going to multi-purpose space, whether it be for cinema or any other event, you go through here and then up. There's a lift there, there's a big staircase there, and then that leads up past to the first floor and arrives here. Depending on how on the event or the performance, either you can go into the sky room there or into the auditorium, or if that partition is retracted, then actually there are 3 ways in, and it has its own dedicated loos, a bar stall, so it could be a temporary bar, for example, installed here. So this group. So hopefully it remains a kind of. Hoping that one of the big debates about the project, you could say architecturally, was to what extent something like circulation, particularly staircases, form part of a kind of representational sort of civic gesture. And in this case, I think we were really keen to do something which is really efficient. So it's almost like it's somehow the elegance is not so much that you have a 6-meter wide stair, you have the one that's the right width, and it's somehow the planning is very tight. Hopefully a window here you can see back out, quick snapshot back down the Tunnel Boulevard. But then, as I say, the entrance is through here, up there, and at night, when the gallery is not open, one can enter directly from this other boulevard. So,
the ground floor. This is really important because the auditorium can have a separate life to the actual gallery. So if the gallery is closed, at the moment they close at 8 PM, so people who go to the theatre can drop in and see the exhibition on the way. Say the galleries were to close at 8 PM, you'd be able to close the entrance there and that one there, and the front of the building would still be accessible after hours. We can also close it here, so there'll be a second entrance, probably there or there, not quite sure yet, where people can go, just use the bar and then go up to the auditorium.
Great. And then the second question is, can we have really, really good seats, please? Because obviously, in the cinema sense, we are competing here, but we are competing with 4D as well, so still to come. And I mean, the OU shows some great films on Wednesday, and but I never go in because I can't stand sitting on the really poor seating that they have. And with bleacher seating, generally it's not quite as good as permanent fixed seating. So can we have really, really good? Maybe the set was good.
Did I
stumped up for some excellent.
Did I say earlier that we're still fundraising? How comfortable do you want those seats?
I mean, actually, it's an important question because bleacher seating, I mean, I associate it with the gym hall where I went to school. And as far as I know, it all did the job and I can't think remember being uncomfortable. But I think that now it's moved on, the technology and the manufacturing has moved on so much because these sort of multi-purpose spaces, and one of the ones, for example, that's got very good retractable seating with some of that Nottingham Contemporary. And that's actually in a different league to what I remember. I've used it, I've been in the audience, and I actually thought, wow, this is not this sort of slightly halfway house thing. It actually consumes quite a lot of space, even retracted, but the seats are, I mean, whether they're quite the armchair that you get now in the sort of IMAXs and things like that, I'm not sure, but they're certainly, you know, much more than perhaps we all associate with them. So but you know, that's going to be a big, that's going to be one of the big specifications, as it were.
Anyone else? Tim?
The original idea on the last plan I saw was to have the sky room and then there's a room actually at a higher level, and the cinemas below. Have the two been combined into one volume now? And is there any option to access a roof terrace?
That is effectively what's happened. They've been combined for a number of reasons. There aren't any plans to access a roof terrace at the moment. I don't know if it's something we could consider. I think one of the issues with the area is that it's incredibly open to the elements, incredibly windy. So even for the 1 week a year when you might want to be on there, it would probably be quite uncomfortable. But it's not in the plans at the moment. There isn't a map. We did talk about it at certain stages.
We have, and it's possible, but I guess in terms of all the decisions that we've had to make about the program, let's say, for example, retractable seating in the auditorium is one where the investment to get up there in terms of safety, enclosure, is so high that I think that structurally it's always available for the future, and I think that we sort of know that. But at the moment, really, this is still in the location. It's still the ground floor is 6 meters tall. So this room, which is still called the sky room, which will be glazed at the front, is still at a high level, and then behind it is the auditorium. And then what we're looking forward to is that it will change with use, hopefully a lot. And sometimes this will be one great big hall, sometimes it'll be used separately. But at the moment we don't have access to it.
That's good. Given that the sun rises and sets on Midsummer Boulevard, is there anything to prevent that gorgeous stainless steel building reflecting the sun into the eyes of drivers and causing accidents? It's a very operational, boring question. But
well, it's actually it's fair enough. It's actually folded, so it's not flat. It's basically it's a sort of triangular zigzag, so you can't actually get a flat surface out of it. So the idea will be that you get some reflection, and but it's sort of broken sections. Bits of sky, bits of tree.
I wonder if you've had a chance to think about how you're going to use the money from the Community Foundation and Margaret Powell grant to improve accessibility. Have you had a chance to think about that?
Could we go to ground floor plans? One of the main things that we're really pleased to be delivering, and we're thrilled about Community Foundation's announcement, was it last week, 2 weeks ago, that they're funding this project. One of the features that we're able to include as a consequence of that funding is what's called a Changing Places toilet, and it's a facility for people who have severe and complex needs. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's only one other of these facilities in central Milton Keynes.
Two.
There are two others, one in the hospital and one...
One in the shopping centre and one at McIntyre in Cranbrook.
What we found is that there are 8,000 people in our catchment area who require these kinds of facilities, and so it includes a hoist, a shower, the space required for particular equipment, and it will enable us to develop programs that we're not able to develop at the moment, work with certain people in our communities who would like to do more work with. So that's a very substantial part of our programming, and hopefully the theatre will also be able to use it. So it will provide, it will enable people who previously could not use these facilities to come into town and use them, which is incredibly important. And then there are a number of other things, such as I think they're funding things like some signage in Braille and adjustable height tables and chairs. And also the width of the building exceeds the statutory requirements. And what else?
The oversized lift going up to the auditorium floor, which is large enough for 2 wheelchair users to use simultaneously. So it was a combination, as Anthony says, the Braille signage, the oversized lift, changing places toilet, height adjustable tables, and the widening of all of the main access routes and the doors, just as that sort of ease of navigation.
But also, I'd add that, I mean, at a strategic level, every space in the building is fully accessible. So that's the sort of given it's required by law. It's actually, we've gone slightly beyond what's required in terms of widths, in terms of, this was remember, they showed about a month ago, some long conversation about the scale of a lift for 2 wheelchair users simultaneously. But also in the planning, so for example, if you come into a show, to an exhibition, it's all on one level. So that was one of the big questions at the beginning, strategically, is shall we have first floor galleries? I said, well, actually, there's something very nice to come in level access, and then the whole thing, even though it doesn't have lifts, is on one floor, and then the other part of the program is on the floor above. So you're not doing, hopefully, unnecessary vertical, within one exhibition, going up and down when it's not necessary. So from an accessibility point of view, it will be, I think, should be very, very good.
I don't know if there's a whole body of theory behind what I'm going to ask about, literature on the subject, because it's a naive question, but when I go to galleries such as the National Gallery, and I see a painting or an exhibit, I can sit down and look at it. And I noticed some research somewhere the other day that said that people regularly only afford about 15 seconds or less. And I've just kind of...
To each work?
Yeah. Well, a lot less than that, in fact. And my question is there a plan to put a bench or anything? It could be elegantly rational and brutalist or whatever, but is there any kind of plan for that? Or is there a body of theory that disapproves of such an instruction?
No, not at all. So whether there are plans to have seating within the galleries?
Yeah.
Is that, well, definitely, and there is a budget for furniture. We haven't got there yet. So I don't know whether we'll be commissioning bespoke furniture or getting off the paint. I really don't know. There certainly will be seating, and it'll come out according to the exhibitions. But we hope that all of these spaces, including having a shop and a cafe and bar, will encourage people to come spend more time in the building, and I think that will be an important part of it, absolutely.
And it's also interesting that as it's very much an exhibition-led event, because, for example, with contemporary work, with film work, it's now almost standard that slightly longer films have seating areas in order for people to be able to watch them comfortably. And then the next show might be entirely floor-based.
Yeah.
So it's always sort of moving, but I think that, I think that the furniture story is one that's going to come over the coming months.
But it is a comment that quite a lot of our visitors make, actually, that we don't have enough seating in the galleries, and so certainly it's something we need to think about very carefully.
Would you tell us a little about spaces around the building, and also something about the more mundane aspects of the building, like storage, service deliveries, offices, things like that?
Okay, well, since this plan is on here, all services arrive here, and it's a shared kind of goods access with the theatre. So in terms of turning circles and all of those things, and refuse is out back here. The art handling access is at the back here, through here. So basically, all servicing comes from effectively this shared yard with the theatre. I mean, actually, the property boundary it is gallery land, but effectively the infrastructure is shared with the theatre. Then there is storage wherever we can find it. So on the intermediate level, I show, sorry, the wrong direction. The intermediate, the sort of 3 metre above ground floor. So the ground floor is actually 6 metres tall, the galleries. So that's the void on the upper side of the gallery. All of this is storage, except for the void here, which is to do with art handling. So the art handling has to be tall. There is some storage, sort of part of the kitchen suite has its own store. The offices will be here, in this side of the building. And I think that we have been talking over the past week about this cinema, about whether it could be, I mean, storage is one of the hardest questions. Every institution needs it. It costs a lot to build, but you can't rent it to anyone. So it's a sort of it's a trickle. I don't think that any building has ever knowingly had too much. And
so what's great about this space is it's the mezzanine, so all exhibition-related stuff like vitrines and plinths and empty crates and AV equipment can be stored on this mezzanine level on this side. On this side, we'd imagine storing a lot of the education material, but also as there's easy access to the auditorium, we might store some of the equipment for the auditorium here. One of the reasons we're hoping to build over there to have additional storage is also to have to provide a green room, so the speakers or performers could use a room here before going upstairs to the auditorium. So it's actually quite ample. Probably it provides more space than we currently have.
So there's a lift to that mezzanine level, is there?
There isn't a lift. We have a scissor lift, which would provide access, and for things like vitrines and lighting, AV equipment, we'd be able to use that.
That's a double height kind of goods entrance yard.
Yeah, completely. And what about the spaces around?
And then in terms of the spaces around, we've been developing a very ambitious scheme, which I think I mentioned before, which takes the name of City Club, and it's inspired by some of the early plans for the city. Which is for an amazing recreational, social, educational and cultural space. And what we'd really like to do is to develop a cultural quarter for Milton Keynes at this end of the boulevard. And there have been a lot of discussions with all the stakeholders, the landowners of the shopping centre, the theatre district, the Parks Trust and others, how we can try to improve what's called Midsummer Boulevard East. And we've come up with a fantastic scheme which is about looking back at some of the original designs and enhancing them and improving them. So what we would ideally like to do is create an artist-designed playground here. This is the learning, family and education zone. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a playground out here so families, when parents bring their toddlers on a Tuesday morning for workshops and they're chucking glitter and shaving foam or whatever around, they can then go out and play on a playground. So that becomes a whole sort of family, and it's quite a protected area between the theatre and the gallery. What we'd like to do on that side is to build some kind of constructed garden that would then connect to Campbell Park. So there's the underpass, which is always a subject of discussion, but it would be fantastic to somehow commission some great artworks on and then connect the cafe to the boulevard and the park. And then the front, Margaret Powell Square, we'd really like to improve. And a couple of ways we're thinking of doing that is with lighting, much better lighting, but also seating. So we have been looking at the original designs of benches and lampposts and all those kinds of things to try and make this place a much more welcoming, inviting and interesting site. And signage also is a massive problem across the whole city. We'd like to work to somehow make the gallery and theatre more visible and easier to access. At the moment we have a problem with people going to the shopping centre, getting in their cars and driving to the escape. What we really want to do is try and get people to walk across and drop into the gallery, the theatre, etc. on the way. Yeah.
Talking about car parking, there's quite a debate going on about that. Are you making any input to the debate about car parking. Some of us are quite unhappy about the proposals that have been put forward. Explain, for instance, I don't know if you're aware of that pressure group.
Yes, which any particular car parks you're referring to?
Well, the whole set of proposals for further car parking, underground car parking, with alternatives.
Beyond John Lewis, or are you thinking?
Anywhere. I mean, I just, are you leaving it? Maybe it's something you don't think is relevant to your plan.
Well, it is relevant in a broader strategic sense, and we did object to the plans for the car park that were put forward by Hermes. Not because we don't think that there isn't a need for good parking space, but we were hopeful that there might be more ambitious schemes for such an important part in the centre of Milton Keynes. That's really as far as I can go.
What about monorail, for instance? Do you have any ideas on that?
I would love a monorail. There's a real, the distance between the gallery and the train station is a bit of a problem. It's very difficult to get people, up the boulevard. It's an incredibly long distance, and so anything there are complaints about public transport still in Milton Keynes, but so anything that would somehow, bring the major points in the city closer together would be incredibly helpful.
What about this part here?
This building?
Yeah.
So this building upstairs will be offices for gallery staff.
Okay.
And the ground floor will continue, at the moment it will continue to be a project space. As you know, the end of the building is used for monthly exhibitions of community related projects. And in here we do all sorts of events. At the moment we have our parent and toddler sessions, we also have our talks and screenings and concerts. We hope to keep using it for programming. Anyone who came to our opening, I don't know if it's 2 weeks ago now, we'll have seen that we've run out of space and need larger facilities. I think we had about 600 people that night, and if we can continue drawing those kinds of crowds, we'll need as much space as we can get. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm really thrilled that you were able to attend. I think, is there a comment, or if anyone does want to leave a comment, there's some forms and pens there. Please do write them. It's always useful to have feedback. Or do come and speak to me or Tom personally, or my colleagues at the gallery. And I'm really thrilled that you could make it. Thank you very much.